Have you ever stopped to think about how those huge, incredibly detailed fictional worlds actually come together? You know, the ones with layers of history. Do they just spring into existence fully formed, or is it maybe something, well, something more organic?
That's a great question, and it leads us right into today's topic.
Exactly. We're diving deep into the surprising origins of lore in one of the biggest trading card games ever, Magic: The Gathering.
That's right. For this deep dive, we're really zeroing in on Magic's, let's say, foundational lore, specifically the Arabian Nights expansion from '93 and then Legends from '94.
Okay.
And our sources here are pretty solid, comprehensive lore reports, historical analyses. They really help pinpoint just how pivotal these early sets were.
So our mission today, for you listening, is basically a shortcut to understanding this pretty incredible journey. How a game that honestly started with absolutely Murderty story.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
How it pieced together this rich, sprawling multiverse, you know, all these different dimensions, the planes all connected. We're going to uncover some surprising facts and design choices from way back then that didn't just lay the groundwork. They literally shaped the future of the game. It's a journey from, well, accidental creation to an enduring universe.
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. They had this blank slate, no story, just game mechanics. You'd think that's a massive hurdle for building a fantasy world, right?
You would think so.
But you're saying this actually turned out to be an advantage. How did having zero story become their secret weapon?
Well, it's truly fascinating because that initial flexibility, drawing inspiration maybe from settings like Dungeons and Dragons, which are pretty adaptable, it allowed for really organic, iterative storytelling. The whole multiverse concept itself, that wasn't some grand top-down plan from day one, not at all. Yeah, it was actually pieced together retroactively with later sets. This sort of emergent approach meant the lore could adapt, it could incorporate popular elements as the game grew, rather than being stuck in some rigid plan.
Okay, so if flexibility was key, then Arabian Nights must have really put that to the test. December 1993. It wasn't just Magic's first expansion.
All right.
It was this radical thematic departure. The first and pretty much the only expansion based directly on a real-world setting, 1001 Nights.
And what's really insightful here is the intellectual property, the IP challenge this created. See, the set used public domain material.
Yeah.
Sounds fine, right?
Yeah, seems straightforward.
But this early experience led directly to what they now call the Ribia scale.
Ribia scale.
Yeah, it's basically Wizards of the Coast's internal guideline for how likely they are to revisit a plane. And Rabia, it's at the absolute never again end of that scale.
Wow.
They have a clear policy. We'll never, ever go back to Rabia because, well, it is technically not their IP.
So it wasn't just a legal hiccup then?
Oh, no. It was a profound early lesson in brand management. It teaches us, I think, that even public domain stuff, if you integrate it without full control, can create long-term headaches. Liabilities, even.
Right. Which explains why companies now are so careful about owning their IP.
Exactly. It's a hard-won lesson Magic's learned. But, crucially, they learned it early enough. It let them build this huge licensing empire on a new foundation, like their current Universes Beyond strategy where they collaborate with other IPs.
Okay, so the IP thing was a major learning curve, but it sounds like they also waded into some tricky cultural territory. Direct references like Allah and Dervish. I imagine that raised some eyebrows, especially as the game grew globally.
Oh, definitely.
What was the fallout there, and how does Wizards approach religious or cultural stuff today?
Well, Mark Rosewater-Merrow, to the fans, he's Magic's head designer now, he's explicitly said that direct religious connotations are now a big no-no.
A big no-no, huh?
Yep. And that even affects reprints of older cards like Wrath of God, which obviously has religious overtones. It really shows a significant shift in the company's approach over time.
So a maturation process.
Exactly. As the brand matured, went global, there was this clear move towards prioritizing, global audience sensitivities, trying to avoid potentially offensive or misappropriated content.
It makes sense. So, okay, if Magic's multiverse explicitly excludes our universe, how did they actually reconcile the real-world Arabian Nights content within their own fictional world? What was the clever retcon for Arabia? How did they twist the lore to make it fit?
This is where their ingenuity really comes through. Arabia was retroactively introduced as a fictional plane, but uniquely described as, get this, 1001 completely identical planes that are all somewhat similar.
1001 planes? Seriously?
Yep. This ingenious 1001 planes retcon isn't just Like a clever fix, it's a masterclass in retroactive continuity or retconning. It proves that a really robust narrative doesn't have to be static, right? It can absorb and recontextualize its own past. It can turn what look like mistakes into cornerstones of its evolving story.
Huh. So it justified the variations in the original tales.
Precisely. And it set a pattern for how Magic's lore would be managed and expanded for decades. It shows that a compelling story can emerge organically, sometimes just out of necessity.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Let's talk about some of those iconic characters from Arabian Nights and how they actually showed up as cards.
Oh, absolutely. Let's start with the central figure, Scheherazade. She appeared as the card Scheherazade.
Right.
And let me tell you, this card was infamous, legendary, but maybe not in a good way.
Huh, why is that?
It had this story within a story subgame mechanic. It literally forced players to pause their main game, shuffle up another deck, and play an entire subgame of Magic.
Wait, a whole separate game? In the middle of a game?
Yes, sometimes for 10, 15 minutes. You can imagine tournament organizers were just thrilled.
Oh man, I bet.
It got banned pretty quickly because, well, people wanted to finish their round sometime that day. And you also had King Shahryar, who became the card King Suleiman.
Okay. What about Aladdin? He's probably the most famous name.
Right, Aladdin. Interestingly, his card art depicts him with a Chinese appearance.
Chinese? Why?
It traces back to a French translator,
Yeah.
Antoine Galland, who actually added Aladdin's story, which wasn't in the earliest manuscripts, to his translation of 1001 Nights.
Huh. TIL. And mechanically.
Mechanically, his card, along with Old Man of the Sea, introduced something groundbreaking. They are the first ever creatures that tapped to permanently gain control of a target permanent.
Ah, the stealing effect. That's still a big part of the game.
Exactly, a core mechanic born right there. We also saw Ali Baba and Sinbad represented as the card Sinbad. The set was full of jinns and Ifrit, those elemental spirits.
Any standouts there?
Well, Juzam Jinn was this iconic original creation, not directly from the stories, but hugely powerful and sought after. And then Serendib Ifrit and Urnam Jinn were massive constructed all-stars back in the day.
Meaning they were staples in competitive decks.
Oh yeah, absolutely top tier. And it's worth noting too, since the legendary creature type didn't exist yet.
Right, you mentioned that was coming later.
Yeah, so a later lore concept, the thousand-fold refraction on Arabia, was invented to retroactively explain why big names like Aladdin and Sinbad weren't mechanically legendary in this set. It kind of explained the multiple versions across those 1001 planes.
Clever way to patch the hole.
Very. And we should also mention Taysir, a really powerful planeswalker, one of those unique magic users who can travel between planes. His origin story got unified across Arabia in the Arabian Nights comic. He's arguably one of the most powerful planeswalkers ever in the lore.
Wow, okay, so from these early experiments, these lessons learned, Magic was clearly ready for its next big leap. Just a few months later, June 1994, they released Legends. And this set, it sounds like it truly fundamentally changed Magic by introducing that concept you mentioned, the legend creature type. What was the impact?
Oh, the legend type was a huge step for Magic's canon, for establishing actual characters.
Yeah.
The initial rules were pretty strict.
How so?
You could only have one copy of any specific legend card in your entire deck, and only one of that legend could be on the battlefield at any time. If a new one came into play, the older one was just destroyed.
Ouch. So really unique.
Exactly. Now, those specific rules got refined later into the legendary super type we have today, which is a bit more flexible. But that core concept, it was absolutely crucial for establishing unique named characters within the game rules. It gave them mechanical identity.
And Legends didn't stop there, right? It brought another massive shakeup, multicolored cards. Before this, everything was just one color. How did that change things?
Revolutionary is probably the right word. Multicolored cards allowed designers to make cards with more restrictive mana costs,
Okay.
which in turn meant they could justify giving those cards more powerful effects. It opened up entirely new synergies between different colors, and it fundamentally reshaped how players even thought about building decks.
I can't even imagine Magic without multicolored cards now.
Right. There's such a cornerstone of the game's strategic depth today. It all started there.
And with multicolored cards came some iconic creatures. The original 5 Elder Dragons from Legends, Arcades, Sabbath, Chromium, Nicol Bolas.
The Evictus Asmadi and Palladium Mors. Yep. These dragons were actually used to organize family trees for the other legendary creatures in the set based on their three-color identities.
A way to structure the legends?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of surprising looking back that Nicole Bolas, who eventually becomes Magic's main villain for years,
Yeah, he's a huge deal later on.
didn't even have flavor text on his original card.
No story snippet, nothing.
Nope, zero. It really shows how little long-term narrative planning there was right at the start. But these Elder Dragons, they also famously inspired the fan-created format Elder Dragon Highlander,
Ah, EDH.
which, of course, evolved into the official Commander format, now arguably the most popular way to play Magic for many people.
That's a massive legacy just from those 5 cards and a fan idea.
Absolutely huge.
And beyond the cards themselves, it sounds like many Legends characters had their stories really fleshed out later, going way beyond just a name and some stats on a card. How did that happen?
Exactly. The lore for these characters really took off through 2 main novel series, Legends Cycle 1 and Legends Cycle 2.
Okay, actual books.
Actual books. Cycle, I focused on characters like Johann, Jedit Ojanen, Hazan Tamar, fleshing out their conflicts on the main plane of Dominaria. Cycle 2 explored figures like Tetsuo Umezawa and Lord Dark, the Madaran Empire.
So different storylines.
Yeah, building out different parts of the world. And these novels, alongside Armada comic books like Legend of Jedit Ojanen and Elder Dragons, they were critical in building Magic's cosmology.
Cosmology meaning?
Basically, its whole story Bible.
Yeah.
You know, the known planes, the key planeswalkers, how they all connect. This was how they turned simple card names into these sprawling narratives with history and motivations.
So we've covered lore, characters, but what about the lasting mechanical legacies of these early experimental sets, beyond just story stuff?
Oh, plenty there, too.
Uh,
From Arabian Nights, we already mentioned stealing permanence with Aladdin and Old Man of the Sea.
right.
There were also opponent-activated abilities, like on If Tiff Ifrit. Your opponent got to choose whether to activate an effect on your creature. Very unusual back then.
Interesting design space.
And lands. Lands started doing more than just tapping for mana. Iconic examples like Library of Alexandria for card draw, still banned in Legacy, restricted in Vintage, and Bazaar of Baghdad, which lets you draw, then discard a cornerstone of modern dredge decks.
Still powerful today.
Absolutely. Richard Garfield, the creator, also clearly had a fondness for coin flips and randomness, which showed up on several cards. And then there were set hosers, like City in a Bottle.
Set hosers.
Cards designed specifically to punish cards from one particular set, in this case, Arabian Nights. It was an idea they quickly abandoned, thankfully. Too narrow led to feel-bad moments.
Yeah, I can see that. What about Legends mechanics?
Legends gave us Enchant World cards. The unique rule was only one Enchant World could be in play total across all players. That concept evolved into today's World Enchantments.
Okay.
There was Rampage, a combat keyword that gave creatures a bonus if they were blocked by multiple creatures. Didn't stick around long term, but it was an experiment.
And the infamous one.
Ah, yes, banding.
Oh yeah, banding. Still confuses people.
Notoriously difficult to understand. It involved complex damage assignment rules when creatures attacked or blocked together in a band. It was eventually phased out just due to sheer complexity, but again, a bold experiment in combat mechanics.
Incredible how much ground they covered mechanically in just those 2 sets. And they also included some of the most powerful cards ever printed in Magic, didn't they?
Without a doubt. Cards like Mana Drain, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, Moat, Caracas, the Abyss.
Yeah.
These are staples in Eternal formats, incredibly valuable, incredibly powerful.
Mana Drain especially got better later, right?
Yeah, ironically, it became even stronger after they removed the mana burn rule where you used to lose life for unused mana. But, you know, on the flip side, these sets also had some real stinkers. Wood Elemental from Legends is widely considered one of the absolute worst Magic cards ever printed. Just abysmal cost for a terrible effect.
Huh. Every set has its duds, I guess.
True. And we can't ignore the, let's call them failures of this era as really invaluable learning experience. Well, the banning of culturally offensive cards like Jihad and Stone-Throwing Devils, which happened later, and problematic mechanics like Sherazad causing tournament nightmares. These taught Wizards crucial lessons about cultural sensitivity, game balance, tournament logistics, especially as the brand was going global.
So not just missteps, but foundational lessons.
Absolutely. They learned from them.
So in a way, even these early ideas, including the ones that didn't quite work or were problematic ended up inspiring future mechanics down the line.
Absolutely. It's this continuous cycle of inspiration and refinement. You take concordant crossroads from Legends, giving everything haste globally. That directly inspired Lear cards like Fervor, which just gives your creatures haste, a more balanced approach.
Right.
Or cards that cared about how many lands you had, like Dakin Blackblade or Hazon Tamar from Legends. They influenced a whole category of land-focused cards later on.
Yeah.
It really shows this dynamic design philosophy. Early ideas, even if imperfect, become fertile ground. They learned, they iterated constantly.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Arabian Nights and Legends. They were truly the genesis, the starting point for Magic's huge, enduring lore.
Absolutely.
What we've seen is this period of really rapid development and amazing willingness to just experiment, try things out, and this iterative design where compelling flavor, the story ideas, often came before the mechanics were fully nailed down, kind of the reverse of how you might expect things to be built.
And it really highlights how powerful retconning retroactive continuity became for them. It let them weave all these disparate elements, even the slightly awkward ones, into an ever-evolving story. The lessons they learned from successes and challenges in these early sets, they continue to shape Magic's approach to world building, character development, even IP management today.
It really proves a brand can grow by embracing its past, right? Even the messy parts. So, thinking about all this, what does this deep dive into Magic's sort of unplanned organic lore development tell you, our listener, about the power of flexibility in creating something that really lasts? Do you think the most robust, most beloved stories are always born from some rigid upfront plan? Or can adaptability maybe be a kind of creative superpower? Something to think about.